delighted. We are absolutely delighted that Judy here has agreed to give us a guided tour of the Aventine Hill here in Rome. This is something that we've wanted to do for quite a while, and we just managed to do it just in the last couple of weeks. Judy is a native of Dublin, but has years of experience of guiding people around all the historical and maybe at times lesser well-known parts and sites of Rome. And she suggested that we start off by taking a tour of the Aventine Hill, where we could spend some time looking at some of the places of significance and interest there. To give you a taste of what we're going to talk about tonight, Judy and I, Helen, who is joining us from Australia, and Salvatore spent a Saturday morning walking around, and we made a little video. Now, this is very much a work, it's a sort of
we have to apologize. The quality of the taking of the footage is not top class because it was me. And I'm not a professional, and overall we have probably to buy some instrument to make it better than with the phone. No, but
the important thing is we hope that it will give you a taste of what we experienced. And I must give thanks to not only Salvatore's input, but and also Brent, who's on our committee, who gave us some advice, but most importantly, Helen, who took the video and the audio on the plane with her to Australia and has been working on it. And it's thanks to her that we're able to watch it. So I suggest that we start the evening by watching this little video.
And when things are a little better, things are almost settled, but the hope is that we can have Judy to guide us live for the people that are living, that are here in Rome, and have this super interesting stuff.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Kira,
so Judy, we're going to show the video. Hopefully this will work. So this is the first hurdle. Let's see if we can do this. So I'm going to share my screen, Helen. Okay.
Kira, I'll do it. It's okay.
Okay, very good.
Better.
Don't worry. I got it. Okay.
Our director, Kevin, is in Australia.
To see you. We've been meaning to do this for a long time, and with COVID and everything, it's been difficult. But we're finally here. Finally, at Santa Sabina, and this is great. I'm really looking forward to having a little walk around with you. And I know we're going to start off here. But tell me first of all, how long have you been living here in Rome?
I've been living in Rome for 33 years.
Wow! And it is amazing. You could live here. You could spend a lifetime and still never see everything.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many things to see that are even off the beaten track that not everyone thinks of going to see.
Oh, absolutely. And you're a native of Dublin.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. You've still got your accent, I can hear.
Oh, good.
A
A
lovely
little bit.
accent, that lovely accent. And you are a tour guide here, and so you're an expert of all the places
Well,
that people should
we
go
try
to
our
see.
best,
Huh?
yes.
Both the well-known and also the less well-known.
Exactly. We're trying to promote places that are not so well known because the other places are so busy or queuing. It's difficult to get tickets, so it's great to try and showcase some of the lesser known parts of the city.
Yeah. Well, I'm delighted. I'm delighted. I am really looking forward to what we're going to look at today. We're starting off here in this beautiful basilica. This is a place that you know well. This is the Basilica of Santa Sabina.
Exactly. It was founded in 425 AD by Peter of Illyria, and it is still a very, very traditional interior today. They actually worked hard to bring it back to its original interior. And these doors, for example, are going back to the 5th century. These are a completely unique remnant of the past from the beautiful cypress wood, and they show scenes from the life of our Lord and from the life of Moses. So we start up at the top left with the first, one of the actual first scenes of our Lord on the cross, the first crucifixion, with the eyes open and no halo yet. They hadn't even developed that. This is such early Christian iconography.
Really.
And if you can come a little bit closer here, then you can see that you have the healing of the man born blind, 3 of the early miracles. Then you have the loaves and the fishes, and then you have the wedding at Cana, when they called for the servants to fill the jars, and they filled them with water, and then it became the most delicious wine. And then down below you can see our Lord rebuking Thomas, who had to touch the wound, remember? And then you've got scenes from the life of Moses, the early life of Moses. And then we have our Lord before Pilate here on that first column. And then we have the women with the angel at the tomb. And then more scenes from the life of Moses here. And then you have our Lord appearing to the two Marys after his resurrection, and then you have the acclamation scene down here below. It's all beautifully carved in wood. Can you imagine that it's survived all these centuries?
Absolutely, it's stupendous. The detail in it is really quite extraordinary.
It is.
And
We just
so well preserved as well.
Exactly. So we just go on there. There is the Epiphany with the 3 Magi who came to bring their gifts. You've got the Ascension scene. You've got the denial of Peter. You see the rooster there on the right-hand side who's going to crow 3 times. And then you have more scenes from the life, from the Exodus. You can see the crossing of the Red Sea here. And then over here then is the triumph of the church, that big scene. And then you have Habakkuk flying to Daniel. The first example we have, one of the earliest, of an angel with wings. And then we've got the ascension of Elijah. You see the chariots of fire there. So this is just so rich, this door here.
Absolutely.
And then we can see that they have already opened the main doors here, and we can walk inside and get the full impression of what it's like to enter.
I'm in awe of this door. I mean, it was, I guess, instructional by nature, isn't that right? But you
Exactly.
really feel, you know, the power and the majesty of the presence of not of the door and the church. You really feel the majesty of it as you're walking.
Exactly.
So,
Isn't it just amazing?
Absolutely.
And these columns are actually in the original marble from a temple to Juno Regina, a very important temple to the wife of Jupiter. And they were brought here and put in the church. And this was what was called a titulus. It was a church that would have been a bit like a parish church today, and dedicated to Santa Sabina, who's believed to have been converted to Christianity through her servant Seraphim. And they're both buried under the main altar here. We've got beautiful marble on the floor, and we have a lovely marble decoration above the columns, which shows us the images of the Eucharist, you know, the paten and the chalice. And the windows that give this very beautiful diffuse light are actually made of selenite. And that gives you that lovely light inside, very, very beautiful and golden. Soft, exactly.
beautiful.
And then up here we have the main altar. And we'll go and have a look now in a moment. But before we go on, we just want to show you the inscription up here, which is to the church in beautiful gold and blue mosaic letters. And we have 2 female figures which represent the 2 strands in Christianity. So that's the church from the community, the circumscribed, and then on the other side it's from the Gentiles. So that's represented by St. Peter and St. Paul, who are the patron saints of Rome to this day, celebrated on the 29th of June. And so that goes back to the year 425. Incredible that it's still so
Incredible, and it looks so fresh.
As if it was done the other day.
Absolutely. One of the things that really strikes me about this church is that it's so very, very rich in decor and colour and so well preserved, and yet it feels understated. It feels very, very rich, but yet you're not blown away by a complete blast of elaborate or exaggerated decor in gold like you might see in some other churches.
Exactly. A lot of churches in Rome were rebuilt or refurbished during the period of the Baroque, so they're very elaborate. What they were trying to do here is get back to what it must have been like to be an early Christian in Rome. You could imagine after all those years of persecution, and all of a sudden then you have the Edict of Milan with Constantine, and you're able to build churches. And so they choose the Basilica form, which is with the columns that divide up one major nave from two smaller ones. And again, the ceiling is just so simple, with the star representing Our Lady, the 8-pointed star, just a simple wooden ceiling. And then we have the very unusual and unique burial tomb of one of the orders of the Dominicans, because this church was given to the Dominicans in 1222. So it's a very old church for them. And we mustn't forget that this is the church where Pope Francis comes every year on Ash Wednesday to celebrate Mass, and that's the first of the Lenten stations, and it's very famous for that reason as well.
So it's of great significance.
Just to show the tomb here, you see it's in a mosaic. This is the very, very peaceful. His name was Munich, and he was one of the famous priors of the Dominican order in Rome in the 14th century. But it's just very beautiful.
Very beautiful.
Very solemn and very moving.
Absolutely. Beautiful, and yet there's it's beautifully constructed but understated. That's right. There's a simplicity which adds even more to its impact. Isn't that right?
Exactly. Now here's the choir stalls. They go back to fragments from the 5th to the 9th century, and you can see these very beautiful, almost Celtic
Absolutely.
The columns, the palms that would be very typical of the Egyptian world.
It's almost like a St. Bridget's cross,
isn't it? It's just so beautifully done and so well preserved. And this idea of the stone inside the church, which is so beautifully carved, and the Easter candle holder you can see over there with the lovely twist to the pattern, and the pulpits here as well. And then up here we can see a painting which replaces the original mosaic here, and you see our Lord with the apostles and the saints, and then down below you can see the sheep, which represent the flock, which represents the Christian community who are drinking from the rivers of the Gospels, the 4 Gospels. And you can see just this beautiful intimacy between the different figures there as our Lord turns his head and preaches to them.
Absolutely beautiful.
Isn't that just
absolutely
gorgeous?
Beautiful. And you're saying that this replaced a mosaic, the mosaic that was originally.
We have some beautiful mosaics still in Rome, but in this case, unfortunately, it has been lost, but it still gives us the same idea, and this beautiful image as you come in through the church, and then more apostles on the triumphal arch with the 2 cities of Bethlehem and Jerusalem.
Oh, beautiful. And well, in actual fact, this scene and how it's been represented is much more in keeping with the quietness, the quiet, understated feel of the Basilica.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. And it's just such a beautiful place, as you can see, so peaceful, a few visitors. We're up on the Aventine Hill here, and we're going to show you a few more things on the hill. It's very close to Rome, but very close to the centre, but it was a little bit outside of the other 7 hills.
Wonderful. believe we're here. I've heard so much about it. Will you tell me about the store, please?
This is the famous keyhole in the main door into the central headquarters of the Knights of Malta. And there's a surprise when you look through. I won't tell you what it is yet.
I've heard there's a surprise. I'm dying to know.
Well, it's a very beautiful little view through, and we can just see some of the symbols of the Knights of Malta here. You can see the famous cross with the 8 little tails, and that's originally the Amalfi cross. When Amalfi was a maritime republic, and it represents the 8 beatitudes or virtues of the order. And you can see the prows of the ships, you can see their weapons, and you can also see the little tower there in different places, which is the symbol, along with the 2-headed eagle, of the Pope at the time, Clement XIII, who is Pope Rezzonico. And you can see that this is actually extraterritorial. This is not part of Italy. It is part of the property of the Knights of Malta, who were set up originally to look after the pilgrims going to the Holy Land. And then, of course, they did have to also protect them as well. But they started off as a hospital order, taking care of all of those who travelled for thousands of miles on foot to go and visit the Holy Sepulchre. So we're nearly there now. There's always a little bit of a queue. And then around the plaza we can see they're actually restoring it. This is all work by Piranesi, a very beautiful work that he had etched. And you see the way you've got these spirals here, which are there in the Sisio and Fila Grazia. And these are very old. You can see them on the temple, for example, dedicated to Venus at the time of the Julius Caesar himself. And it's the acanthus. We might talk about that another time.
The acanthus leaves on the Corinthian capitals.
Exactly, you know, which are so famous. And so there you can see the embassy of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta at the Italian Republic. So this is their actual diplomatic representation.
Okay, so let's have a look through there now. Oh, it's beautiful. It's what a surprise. It's beautiful. Isn't that gorgeous? It's beautiful. Okay, proviamo.
Go now to the Giardino degli Aranci, the orange garden. These are the bitter oranges, but they're delicious. If you mix one bitter with one normal orange, they get this most amazing juice.
Oh, wow.
And we can't really, but if they fall off the tree, then in January when they're ripe, then you can pick them up afterwards. And so this is the Aventine Hill. It's one of the 7 hills of Rome, and it may be called after the word for a bird in Latin, ave, maybe, because at that time they used to follow the flight of the birds, and that was very important. We've got a word in English, auspicious, which comes from avis specchio, watching the birds, because it's so important what direction they were going in, how many there were, and that's presumably how they actually founded the city on the other hill on the other side. We'll show you that in a moment, the Palatine. And so here we are on the Aventine. It's a very peaceful hill, and it was actually associated with the plebeians in ancient times. They were the lowest level of Roman society, and they had their meeting places here. And it was a little bit outside the city, overlooking the river. And later on, it became the home of convents and churches. And now it's actually a very upmarket area because it's right in the heart of the city, and it's beautifully peaceful. You could be in a little country village. So we're going to go now and show you the orange garden and the view, the panoramic view, which is from the terrace here.
Wow, can't wait.
but not one of the seven, on the far bank of the Tiber. And there's a very famous church, the Church of San Pietro in Montorio, which is where Hugh O'Neill and Hugh O'Donnell are buried after the flight of the Earls. And above that then there's the Aqua Paola, beautiful fountain which marked the end of an aqueduct coming from the north of Rome, from the Lake Bracciano actually. And that's all the Janiculum still with Garibaldi. Now he's all scaffolded at the moment. They're restoring his statue. And then further over on the right is the famous landmark, which is the one that shines in red, white and green, the colours of the Italian flag. It's the lighthouse given to the Roman people by the South Americans. And then further over we're looking at the absolute of Michael over the tomb of St. Peter. That's inside the Vatican. And
No, thanks, love.
if you can see it from here, but that is where you can fit 23 people. And then you can see all of the Vatican museums to the right of the dome. It looks like quite a big distance, but of course the Vatican is the smallest sovereign state in the world. And that niche there, where you can see a little balcony on the top and a big niche there, a big opening, that is where the pine cone is inside the Vatican museums. And that's the summer palace, and then the original palace was closer. And here we can see the lovely little pointed top of the bell tower of San Crisologo, a very important church in Trastevere. That's that area there on the right bank. And then further over we have a whole series of domes from different churches, including on the way the Castel Sant'Angelo with the angel on top, and above that the Vatican Observatory on the Monte Mario hill. And then further over you've got three domes almost in a row. The furthest away is the St. Agnes in the Piazza
You have to come here because you won't be able to see.
St. Andrew, where Tosca begins, the famous opera, and then San Carlo, that's three in a row. Further over then is the square base dome of the synagogue, and in between those is a very beautiful, like an ice cream cone, that's Sant'Ivo alla Sapienza. And then further over we can see a little glimpse of the dome of the Pantheon. It's hidden by a little tower. You can just see the side of the dome, the widest dome ever built in the ancient world. And then further over then the beautiful dome, which is two-toned of the Gesù Church, where St. Ignatius is buried. And further over again then you have the two turrets and the white building, which is the Villa Medici, the French Academy. And then the Spanish steps themselves with the two towers of the Church of the Trinity. And then we've got the beautiful hill, the Capitoline, very important Roman hill here, with the famous Campidoglio buildings. And we're looking at the winged victories, the Nike statues with their chariots on top of the Vittorio Emanuele monument. And then a bit further over, more of the Roman hills. But isn't the view just stunning? And you can follow the course of the river, following the trees. You see it makes big loops as it goes up northwards from here, and then down here on the left to the sea. This is an amazing view.
Extraordinary, and I'm in awe of your knowledge and being able to literally describe as we go along, you know, what we can see as I guess the eternal city, you know, picking out these famous landmarks that I hope in times to come we'll have a chance to go and visit. And
Exactly. Together we'll go and explore a little bit more.
absolutely. This has been absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Judy, I have to say that was just so fascinating and so interesting. Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this morning of walking around and chatting, and I really look forward to doing it again sometime.
Well, I hope we'll get the chance, really.
Yes.
We've been looking for this opportunity for so long.
Absolutely.
And here then is just to finish. We've come down from the Aventine Hill and we're looking over the Circus Maximus to the Palatine Hill, which is another story altogether. And we're looking at the remains of the palace of the emperors that date back to the 1st century. So just to finish here, we've got the statue of Giuseppe Mazzini, a wonderful Italian statesman, and we've just actually passed through what's left of the Rose Garden, and that's another place we might come a different time when they are open, because there's absolutely beautiful roses inside. And this is really the end of the Aventine Hill for today. And it's just so lovely to spend this time with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you. It's been just lovely. A lovely, delightful morning. Thank you.
Okay, I hope everybody was able to enjoy that and follow it okay, and hear all of the just the fascinating things that Judy was telling me. I think it was wonderful. We decided now, Judy. So Judy, please, I'd like to just kind of go, hello, welcome, Judy. Brava, well done.
Well done.
Well done, Judy. Judy, when we were preparing this, we decided, well, you said that in the spirit of a tour where you would be guiding people around, it would be informal in that you would be chatting and people would chip in with their own comments and questions, and that's how you would like this evening to be. Am I right? To kind of have a, not right?
Exactly.
Yes. So we just what we
Mics are open.
yes,
Are open.
the mics are open. What we would like to do is to share with you some slides that are based on some of the things that we saw while we were walking around, and to discuss them. And so Judy has kindly agreed just to, to talk about some of the things that we saw, maybe to add in some extra detail and whatnot. But please, you are also more than welcome to join in and to ask questions or to reflect, give your own ideas and points of view. I think what I'll do, Judy, is I'll share my screen with the slides. Okay, Helen, I hope that's okay.
Go ahead, Kara. Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, Judy, so I'm going to share this with everybody. Okay, I hope everybody can see. Okay, is that all right? Can everybody see? Yeah.
I have a question now. So because I was born in Rome, I have to say, no, and we are rise through the concept that Rome was built on 7 hills. Judy, can you tell us something more about Aventine Hill?
Well, the Aventine is a very important hill because it was just a bit south of the city. You see where we're looking here, if you go north above the Circus Maximus, you can see there's the Palatine Hill, which we see at the end of the video. And above that again, a little bit further north, is the Capitoline. And these 3 of the 7 overlook the river. And of course, it's on the Palatine Hill that the city was founded way back in 753 BC. And all of the hills are on this left bank. You see the River Tiber here is going down to the sea on our left. And so this was the left bank of the Tiber, and that's where Rome was. All of ancient Rome was on this bank that we are on now. Then the other 4 hills are a little bit further away, but the 7 is a very interesting number in Rome because there's the 7 hills, there were 7 kings, It was 7 Roman numerals. And according to Pliny, the famous historian, he said there were 7 underground rivers which were actually drained away with the Cloaca Maxima in the Roman Forum. And it apparently took Aeneas, the famous mythical founder of the dynasty that was to lead to Romulus and Remus, son of Venus herself. He took 7 years to leave Troy and to sail around the Mediterranean to get to the coast of Italy. So there's a lot of significance in the history of Rome and the 7. And we were saying earlier that the Aventine Hill had very many different manifestations because, first of all, it was commercial in the very earliest times because being near the river and the goods were being brought along the river by barge. But then it became the plebeians. They were the farmers, the artisans, the merchants themselves, the lower level of Roman society. And then it became patrician. After that, it became patrician and became a bit like what it is today, where the more wealthier families would have settled with a nice cool breeze, fabulous views. And you saw that when we were in that little park where the orange trees are, there's a lot of fortifications, which go back to the name of a famous family called the Savelli. So if you have any other questions about the hill, it's a fascinating place and a beautiful visit.
Absolutely. Well, without a doubt, it is. Well, and I hope for those of you who either haven't had the opportunity yet to visit the Aventine Hill, that's the little video and Judy's tour gave you a sense of being there, you know. Judy, I'm going to go to the next slide. And so we spent quite a bit of time in Santa Sabina, in the Basilica, walking around. Yeah, and sorry, just a little second. So we spent quite a bit of time walking around and particularly talking about, sorry, I'm just trying to, yes, I just want to, particularly talking about this amazing door, okay? And just so that, you know, our guests can get a better idea of the significance and the beauty of this door, I think it's worth maybe having a moment just to have a look at this particular slide.
I agree. It's, as they say, the first, believed to be the first image of our Lord on the cross, the crucifixion, which has had, obviously, a huge impact on the Christian belief over the centuries. And it's just interesting to think that we're here just 100 years and a little bit more after the Edict of Milan, issued by Constantine, which allowed Christians to practice their faith. So it's a very early, exciting period in Christianity blossoming here in the city of Rome. And people started to come on pilgrimage to pray on the tombs of the martyrs and saints. And remember, Santa Sabina herself, she dates back to the 2nd century. She was decapitated by the Emperor Hadrian in 120 AD. So it's really very old, this church in particular, but also the doors, they're completely original. And the other ancient door that we have to a church goes back to 1050, that's in Westminster Abbey. So this is 6 centuries earlier to have a door and carved in this way with the stories that I believe would have been brought here for the first time by St. Peter when he came in around 39 AD, who having been an eyewitness before even possibly the Gospels themselves were written, who would have then given the local people the story of our Lord for them to follow. And Christianity just continued to expand throughout the city. And it's very interesting because you've got the 2 thieves on either side, and you have this image of what our Lord did for us to give up his own self for our salvation, you know. So it's very interesting that it should be there and that it has been able to reach out through the centuries to us today, that we stop us in our tracks, really, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. It has a huge impact, and it's you know, it's of significance as well. Just this early image, you know, before, I guess, the image of Christ that we identify with now. This was the kind of the development of what was to become, how Christ was to be represented in sculptural form. So it's it really is a significant and beautiful piece. The door itself is magnificent. May we move on to the next slide, Judy? Unless anybody would like to ask a question, please, because it really is open to everybody to chat or to join in. So please feel free if you would like to ask a question or would like to maybe just make a comment.
A beautiful photo you got there. That slide is exceptional because it's up on high and not so easy to see.
Yes, yes, yes.
To see it up close like that with those lovely golden colors to it.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. That's, yeah, it's well worth taking, zoning in and being able to appreciate just the detail and the beauty of not just this panel but other panels, obviously. Now, here we did spend some time in the video chatting, but just to kind of give our guests just an idea again of this beautiful basilica and the beautiful light that comes into it, just the sort of the calmness and the tranquility of the basilica.
And it's interesting you should use that word basilica, which is used for a lot of the oldest churches in the city, because the basilica for the Romans in pagan times had nothing to do with religion.
Yeah.
And just a place for money exchange and law courts and administration. And it always had this long rectangular shape with columns dividing up the naves, a lovely wooden ceiling and an apse. So it's almost as if it's perfect for a Christian church, because the Roman temples were very different. They were small, only the priests went inside. The altar was very often outside on the steps. So for the Christians, that was not a suitable place of worship. So there's this exciting moment, as we said, at the beginning of the 4th century with Constantine, who had previously been fighting the Battle of the Milvian Bridge and had seen the cross and the words, "In this sign you will conquer." So he then brought in this new era of peace for Christians and helped them build these basilicas. And as we were saying earlier, these are columns from a Roman temple that was on the hill, and they were reused. So these columns have a history of their own and just a very, very special kind of atmosphere inside that gives us that feeling of what it would have been like to have been a Christian in those days, and finally being able to practice freely and spread the word even further.
Indeed, indeed. And Santa Sabina isn't the only church on the Aventine Hill. It's of interest, in fact, that there are 2 other basilicas of significance on the hill. Could you tell us anything about these churches, or why the Aventine Hill was seen as a place of religious significance, Judy?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because generally going upwards is like getting you closer to heaven in a way. So we often find churches that are perched on top of hills or mountains even. So I think one of the reasons that churches were built up here, but also Rome is just full of churches. Really, there's absolutely no district you can go to and you don't find a church. And of course, all of these early saints are remembered here, and Saint Alexis is a very interesting story, and it's also actually told in the underground church of San Clemente, run by the Irish Dominicans, not far from the Colosseum. And he was from Constantinople originally and born into a wealthy family. And he wanted to give that all up to become a hermit. So he was engaged to be married, and he convinced his wife to accept this deep desire of his to go away and become just in communion with God. And so she agreed to that. And then 17 years later, he came back, and his own family didn't recognize him. And he lived in a menial capacity in the home of his family, and they actually didn't realize who he was. But when he died, 17 years later, again, this date is important, they found he had a little letter in his hand, and his hand only opened up after death when the Pope came. And inside they found that he had written that he was actually their son. And so you can imagine the consternation when they realized that he had been living with them, but in this very low role in the family. And it's just this very touching story of somebody willing to give up his life for just to dedicate it to our Lord.
Indeed, indeed. I'm going to move along because I'm kind of conscious of our time, and our time is is running before we get to the end of our time together. And also, I'd like to invite anybody who has a question or comment, please, to feel free to join in. Judy, this I find fascinating. When we arrived at the headquarters of the Knights of Malta, I find it absolutely incredible to have this miniature, this beautifully framed through a keyhole, framed image of St. Peter's. Can you tell us anything about this keyhole or that Knights of Malta? How come they ended up on the Aventine Hill? Or
well, it's a very interesting story because it was actually nobleman Alberico II who had headquarters up here, and then he gave it to an order of friars in the 10th century. But the story of the Knights is very interesting because, of course, they were originally founded by a group of merchants from Amalfi, just south of Naples, in a beautiful place on the Sorrento Peninsula, who were in the Holy Land and wanted to set up an order to protect and look after pilgrims on the route to Jerusalem. And so they founded that back in the 11th century. And that is why their cross is the same as the Knights of Malta. And they were in the Holy Land for a long time. They were also at certain periods asked to protect Christians, so they had a defensive role as well. But then they were forced to leave by the Sultan of Egypt, and they retired to Rhodes. So their full name includes the island of Rhodes and the island of Malta, but then they had to leave Rhodes as well. And they went to Malta. Of course, that's where their famous name comes from. And then Napoleon was the one who expelled them from Malta. And that's when they came to Rome, and that's now their headquarters. But it's a very important medical missionary, if you like, role in the world today. And you can only become a knight if you are presented by somebody else. And it's all to do with your moral fiber, basically, your dedication to the church and its activities to help people throughout the world. And so you have to work your way up really by doing work with the order in humanitarian areas to become a knight. I think there's about 13,000 of them in the world today. Women as well are included. And so it's something very special. And they're actually an independent state, even though they don't have any territory left. That is their own territory. And they are actually in contact with about 120 countries in the world with diplomatic relations. But it was just the way that the building was when they had the doorway, they realized that they were looking out at that dome. But this is later. Remember, the dome was only finished in the late 16th century. So it was obviously, as the dome was being built, they realized that there was a connection looking across all the way over. And it just frames it perfectly. And then you have this little hedge inside, and you get this kind of little alcove almost that connects it. And we're looking over to where St. Peter is buried. So that's how Christianity all began in Rome. That's the heart of the Vatican. He was the first pope. He's the one who risked his life to come here and tell the story. So we're going back to the very, very beginning of the story of Christianity in Rome. And of course, so many people died for their faith. That's one of the reasons there's so many churches as well. So just to say, yes, the Aventine is a very special hill, just looking over the city like that. And the idea of walking up some steps or walking up a hill to a church, I think that also becomes inspiring. In fact, a lot of the pagan temples in Rome were built at the top of flights of steps or on hills as well. So this kind of movement upwards, which I think is important in religious times in general. But it is just a unique visual over the city, isn't it? And
absolutely, yes.
Enjoyed it.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and completely unexpected.
No, I want to say on a historical and legal point of view, a curiosity for people that maybe may know that Order of Malta Knights is the only state in the world without a territory. Because all the states that are represented at UN have a physical part of land as their territory, but the Order of Malta that is recognized and it sits in the UN and has no territory whatsoever. Not territory, sorry, territory. Okay.
No, that's
No, just
yeah. Very good. So Judy, I think we may have come to the end of our slides here. Okay, so I'm going to come out of the slides so that we can maybe be together for the last few minutes. And just to invite everybody just to have a look at this slide to see the 7 hills of Rome. And it's something that we discussed in the video, that the idea of perhaps making a tour around the other hills in future, for future, perhaps future events, future discussions. But what I would like to do, Judy, is to just stop sharing my screen so that we can be together for the last little while. And perhaps we could discuss the idea of another hill, another visit to another hill. But also, I would love to hear any comments or questions from anybody, any of our guests. But also, if you have any ideas of places that you would like to visit, or you would like us to go and visit on your behalf, perhaps that might also be of interest. So,
I love the image of Rome the way it would have been at the very beginning, with each hill very specific. I just think that's a great image of it, and you can see that they were a perfect location for a city, with the hills, with the river flowing by. But of course, nobody could have told that foundation of a very simple settlement in 753 BC was going to actually become the mistress of the world, Caput Mundi, the head of the world, and that vast empire was going to be ruled from Rome. So yes, we're very interested in any kind of comments or any kind of requests. Is there something that you would like to know more about in Rome? We're very happy to delve into the history and the geography and bring up whatever we can find that could be of interest to spectators.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any special requests of places that they would like us to go and visit on their behalf? Or maybe any comments? Any questions? Carmen.
Well, it's lovely to see some works of art. I really enjoyed to see again Santa Sabina, really beautiful, one of the most amazing places in Rome for me, for the purity of the architecture there, where you really breathe the simplicity of the early church. And it's really amazing. Yeah, the light, the quietness, the respect that really such a place awakens in us, actually. Of course, the other churches that we saw with their richness, they speak of a later time of Baroque mostly, don't they? Or at least Mannerism. But the purity of Santa Sabina, I think that's something that touches my heart mostly. Yeah.
I agree. Well said, Carmen. Well said. I agree with you. Absolutely. I'm conscious of our time almost coming to an end, folks. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free.
Yes.
Susanna?
Yes, just I wanted, Judy, thank you very much, was very interesting. I have maybe a more personal question. How did you ended up being a tour guide in Rome from Dublin? Can you tell us something more about your career?
Oh, well, I was originally a tour guide in Ireland, so I got to know our beautiful country very well, and particularly the West Coast where we used to go. And then I came to Rome, and I really couldn't work indoors. I was working for Aer Lingus for a little while and for Nouvelle Frontière, if anyone remembers that travel agency, a French one.
Yes.
And I just couldn't stay within four walls. And so I started to study to be a guide here. And it's an amazing place to be a guide with so much beauty and history. And so I've been doing that ever since, all my life since I came. So I'm very, very lucky to have been able to transfer my activity to a different place, and maybe one of the most beautiful tour guide in the whole world here in Rome, the Eternal City.
And
Absolutely.
was
absolutely.
Barry, you had a question?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, my name is Barry. I'm from Cork in Ireland.
And
Welcome. Thank you,
Culture.
Barry.
Culture.
I have a strong Cork accent
Ah,
from
good.
Ireland. And I went to Rome first in 2001 when Italy played Ireland in the Rugby International. And I have visited Rome on 10 occasions since. And I usually bring 50 rugby players from my club. It's called Old Christians in Cork. And every time we visit, I bring them to Santa Maria de Maggiore because it's my favorite church in Rome. And about 7 years ago, I decided I must get a professional tour guide, and I came across Judy. And Judy gave us a tour, and it was absolutely fantastic.
Wow.
And I'm really I was encouraged to join in this evening by a friend of mine who's aware that I have a great interest in Rome, and I told my friend that if I ever ended up by myself, I would go to Rome, base myself in the Irish College, and become a tour guide for the Irish people coming over on rugby. And that friend is Eve Parnell, who is one of your colleagues on your committee, I believe.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
thank you very much for a very enjoyable, I must say, very interesting, informative and enjoyable presentation. And I'm looking forward to the next installment. So thank you.
My Barry. My who.
And Corky Abu.
Yes.
We've had some comments and suggestions here, Eve. So I'm going to just read them out. So let me see. We just push this up. Okay, so San Patrizio. So this is from Oregon. Is that right, Oregon? So San Patrizio and Via Veneto area. Okay. Thank you very much. That's a great suggestion. And then we also have a comment from Palma, who says, we'll definitely have to go and visit Santa Sabina next time I'm in Rome. Thank you so much for this. Great work all around. Thank you. One of the catacombs would be super to see. So that's another, that's a great idea. One of the catacombs. Okay, so folks, I'm conscious of our time. I would, before I thank Judy, I just would like you to mention to you that Eve here is going to tell us about the next event. So please just hold on a little second. She's going to tell us about the next event with the Casa della Cultura Irlandese, which will be coming up next week. But before that, I'd like to say to Judy, a great big Gura mila maigas. Thank you, Judy. Grazie mille. You were fantastic. It was just a lovely experience. Both to go around. I felt very privileged to walk around with you, and then tonight to share this with us tonight. And so I'm looking forward to future tours and chats. So grazie mille. Thank you so much, Judy. Thank you.
Eva.
Thanks. Over to you.
So thanks, Judy. It's really absolutely stunning. Can't wait for the next installment. Next week, we have a different event, and it's the same time, 7 p.m. Irish time, 8 p.m. Rome time, next Thursday, the 8th of December. And we have Brian McCurta is giving a talk, and it's a talk about an Irish layperson who goes to Italy in 1595. And what's interesting is the similarities between Rome then and Rome today. And Brian, he was the head of the Jesuit archives in Rome up to very recently, and he's doing a fellowship in Oxford now. So if you have any questions, along those lines, tune in next week, and you can talk to Brian, and hopefully we'll have a lovely evening like we're having tonight.
Very good. Mahi, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I would also like to thank all of you. So thank you so much for coming along and being with us tonight. You know, your presence made the evening all the more enjoyable and special. So Garamaigov, and we hope to see you all here this time next week. Well, not this time because that will be over, but at 8 o'clock Italian time, 7 o'clock Irish time. And Helen, thank you so much for getting up at 5 in the morning in Australia. Thank you. You're an absolute hero.
You're
Heroine, our heroine. Thank you, Helen.
Beware crocodiles. Beware crocodiles in Australia.
Okay. So Helen, thank you. So
thanks so much to everybody.
Thank you, everybody.